Hello, welcome to the Enhancing Clinical Practice stream of the SNOMED CT Expo 2020. My name's Nicola Ingram and I'm a Senior Terminologist at SNOMED International. I'll be moderating today's session. Please use the Q&A box to type your questions to the presenter. Questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation. I'm now pleased to introduce Robert Stegwee, who is the chair of CNTC 251, which is the European Technical Committee on Standardization of Health Informatics, and Jane Millar, who is the collaboration lead for SNOMED International. They will jointly be presenting Implementing IDMP to Improve Patient Safety and Facilitate Better Healthcare for All. Robert Stegwee, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you for the opportunity to present this UNICOM project that we're involved in to the wider audience. I'll give you an overview of the agenda for today. I'll start with some of the problems that we aim to solve and then provide you an overview of UNICOM, its aim and objectives, and get into the IDMP standards and related terminologies. That's the work package that Jane and I are both participating in within the UNICOM project. And then Jane will take over with the landscape of standards use and go into the role of SNOMED CT and all of this. And we'll provide you with some information about the resources. I also listed some of the key terms and abbreviations that we'll use during this talk. IDMP stands for the Identification of Medicinal Products. It's closely related to ICSR, the Individual Case Safety Report that's regulated for any problems with medications to be reported. And those two sets of standards have been developed already quite some years ago, but we're now into the implementation phase across the world. So what are we trying to solve? We said patient safety is important and better healthcare for all, but what does it mean? Let me give you one example. If we know that V-active and Imdur, when taken combined, are possibly lethal, what does that mean for the other combination of medication that's listed here? Is that also lethal? How do we know? Could we know? And that's, of course, the drug-drug interactions that even though it's the same drug, it might be marketed under a different name, it might have a different package, it might look differently. So you might think, well, maybe this is right. So how do you know whether that's possibly lethal as well? So that's one of the problems. Drug-drug interactions need to understand what's in the drug, what's the ingredients that are there. Another problem that we're trying to solve is with reported side effects. So if we know that Kyresta has reported to be a cause of depression, would the same thing hold for another medication? Actually, it's not a medication, it's just a supplement for bodybuilders, I think. And only if you know what's in there, then you can answer this question. But how do we know what's in there and whether it's labeled the same, it's identified in the same way? So that's what we're looking for. And the final one is when there's a shortage. If Imigran, a very regular migraine medication, is not available at this time, can we substitute it with, for instance, the Russian version, or with a different brand of medication? How can we be sure that it's safe and that it will have the same effects and not unwanted side effects? Those are the three types of problems that we're looking for, and it all boils down to understanding what's in the pill or in the package or wherever it is. So that's what IDMP and UNICOM are about. Just at a glance, UNICOM is a big project. It has a very broad consortium of partners. Some of them are the national competent authorities working together through the European Medicines Agency. There's national e-health competence centers, there's industry partners. Basically, it's health IT industry partners. It's not the pharmaceuticals, although the pharmaceutical industry is also very involved and interested in what we're doing. So that's the broad consortium. There's 8 standards developing organizations. Jane will go into that later. We just started at the beginning of this year, actually in December last year, and we run for the next 4 years. And all the work is divided up in work packages, and we're in work package 1 about the standards, the IDMP and related standards and terminologies. That's the official term for our work package. And we work across broadly 3 different application fields. It's the marketing authorization, the pharmacotherapeutic surveillance of medicinal products. So everything that's regulated, that's where IDMP and ICSR came in first, and that's where they've been designed for. But we also see that we want to use this as part of the everyday clinical use of medicinal products. So we don't want to just look at the authorization and the regulatory perspective, but also at the clinical perspective. And finally, we also want to look at the supply chain. So the physical aspect of moving boxes of medication from one part of the globe to another, because there's a lot of parallel import. When there's shortages, packages will be rerouted. And there's also the issue of falsified medication. And that can also be solved by a good control of the supply chain. The project is not just a research project, although it's funded by the European Commission Research Framework Horizon 2020. It's really linked to national implementations in a number of countries. We've listed the countries here. Other countries are also busy and also interested in what's going on. It links to the national competent authorities, but also to the cross-border care and the e-prescription and e-dispensation across borders. So there's a lot going on. Basically, this is a big program, 21 million euros, but we will reach out to the different standards developing organizations. We will reach out to another group of organizations, experts everywhere. So we really are in the field of making this happen. By the way, the FDA, the American Food and Drug Administration, has already said that IDMP is the way to go. So that's really where we need to look at as well. So it's not just a European project, although our focus will be on Europe. Just looking at some of the aims and objectives. Basically, it is about having the information that's needed to provide safe medication across the globe, to have that flow around in a way that's coded, that's detailed, and that's interoperable. So we understand what it means. And it's not that if you're in a different country, you need different identifiers and you cannot look at the dictionaries or at the formularies and say, well, if this is the case, well, some of the problems that I mentioned earlier cannot be solved if every country has their own information. So we want to use this across the globe. So we are implementing it for market authorization in the European countries. We're also using it in the cross-border digital health services for e-prescribing and also for the patient summary. Those are the 2 cross-border digital health services that are implemented in Europe today. And we're also exploring the implementation of IDMP in clinical practice. So for pharmacovigilance reporting, that you don't need to go to a different system with different identifiers to actually report your individual case safety report, or we also want to use IDMP in medicinal product dictionaries, the dictionaries that are being used by the clinical systems to actually support the prescription process. And other digital health services are being looked into as well. And remember, IDMP was designed for regulatory use in principle. So we're really exploring new grounds when looking at IDMP in clinical practice. Now let me give you a brief overview of what the IDMP standards are all about. It's a group of 5 standards, and it has its related implementation guides. But just to give you a short overview of where we're at, it all starts with what are the substances that this medication is made up of. And that's not just the active ingredient, so the actual substance that makes you better and that interacts with your body to actually cure the ailments or whatever it is that you have. It's also the other substances, because some of those substances can have allergies or other side effects. So it's all the substances that are in that pill or in that fluid that's in there. And that leads me to the next one. What's the dose form? What is it? Is it a pill? Is it a fluid? Do you drink it? Will it be injected? There's all kinds of things to be said about the dose forms. How is it administered to the body? How do you take it? How does it present itself? The third one will be the units of measure. And basically the units of measurement are already out there, but they do form a separate standard within the set of IDMP standards. So we all know how to code milligrams per liter, etc. That's it. So these are the 3 ingredients. What are the substances? How is it being presented? And how do we actually standardize the units of measurement? And then we make it up into a pharmaceutical product. And the pharmaceutical product, that's a different standard. That's where all these 3 things come together, and one pharmaceutical product has a number of substances with strength and a dose form, a unit of presentation, etc. Of course, that's the pharmaceutical product, but it can be marketed in different markets under different names and in different boxes and sizes. And that's where the 5th element comes in. And the 5th element is the actual medicinal product as it is regulated, as it is authorized to be marketed in a certain country, in a certain jurisdiction. And that's where the 5th element comes in. So we have regulated pharmaceutical product information, we have regulated medicinal product information, those link to the market authorization, but we are aiming to use that same information also in the clinical and in the logistical processes as well. This is a very quick and concise overview of a lot of years of work into the standardization of the identification of medicinal products. We're still not there yet. It is being implemented, but we have to be very closely watching those implementations to make sure that if there's any questions, if there's any uncertainties, ambiguities, that we solve those in order to get this global view of what is that a medication, a medicinal product that is used in one country can be traced back to its substances, to its dose forms, etc. So to understand the problems that I spoke about earlier. Are there interactions, drug-drug interactions? Can it be substituted? Are there any known side effects, irrespective of what label or what name is being marketed on? That's where I will end my presentation. And I will now move over to Jane to talk about the relationship between IDMP and SNOMED CT.
Thank you, Robert. I'd now like to talk about SNOMED, SNOMED International, SNOMED CT, and its involvement in UNICOM, and particularly with regard to IDMP. So Robert's already talked about the 3 application fields and talked you through that. But really the use of standards we know already varies across those application fields. But we've also what we also have within the project is 3 implementation domains. We've got development and production, we've got regulation and authorization, dissemination and information, prescription and dispensation and utilization and outcome assessment. So it's very, very broad implementation domains, which the standards need to be able to operate in. And the key thing here is the interoperability. They're requiring use cases requiring interoperability are found at the crossroads, and you'll have seen between the applications and the implementations. And I think this is key, that as we start to look across the two perspectives, you start to see all the different types of interfaces which are going to start to occur. So what's important here is within UNICOM, there's a whole work package which is dedicated to the standards development organizations and working together to support identifiers and approaches for the different use cases and purposes. Here, Robert, who's from SEN himself, GS1, MEDRA, HL7, IHE Europe, ISO, SNOMED International and WHO have all come together. And it's important that actually we're also outreaching to other ones who are not formal partners, but actually who want to participate, to provide the sort of integrated approach that is needed here, and the solutions that are needed to ensure that interoperability. The solutions need to be once and once only to avoid duplication of effort and errors appearing. I'm going back to the diagram which Robert was referencing, and talking here. You can see here again the 5 standards he was talking about. And in this presentation, there is no time to go into great detail, but this has been taken into account in the development of the SNOMED drug model and its implementation in national extensions in our member countries. And I would point you to an expo session, which is doing this in much more detail on the 9th of October between 1400 and 1430 UTC, and you will go and learn the detail. Also, we do have materials available if you want to reach out to us about this. But, you know, Robert's talked about substances, he's talked about dose forms, units of measure. Those are 3 key things which SNOMED International is making sure we can link to, so that the clinical end can link into the IDMP standardization and the use of IDMP. This is the drug model. And again, I'm not going to go through this in any great detail, but here you can see that we're talking on the left-hand side in the grey. This is the SNOMED CT medical product model. And then outside in that box is what is then how the national extension uses that drug model to develop its own drug dictionaries at that national level. And it's important then on the right to see how the medicinal product model does link to 11615, and 11616 within the IDMP model, and that is really key. And in my next slide, I'm going to show you a little bit more detail. So not a diagram, but within SNOMED CT, we have the item real clinical drug that's in the national extension model. And this relates across to the medicinal product in EN ISO 11615. Then on the left, we have the real packaged clinical drug, again in the national extension, which relates to the package model identified in 11615. The clinical drug containing precisely links across to 11615 or the PHP level 4 in 11616. Pharmaceutical dose form, again, it's been taken into account in 11239. And medicinal product containing only, linking across to a PHP level 1 in 11616. And medicinal product form containing only PHP level 3 EN ISO 11616. This is discussed in detail in the presentation I've already mentioned. But I think that I put these up there to show you how important we think it is to link from SNOMED CT and the drug model there, medicinal product model, and across to IDMP to enable data to flow and the interoperability between people using SNOMED CT at the clinical level within clinical records and dispensation and pharmacy across into regulation and stock control, all those other things, so the data can actually flow. I wanted to also identify to you some of the other things which SNOMED International is doing within UNICOM, or a focus on it. Within Work Package 1, which we've largely talked about today, is the Standards Development Organisation. Organisations working together, focusing on IDMP and its implementation between the different standards. And our role within that work package is to identify any work that's needed on any of the standards to facilitate implementation in the agreed use cases. So there's the 8 or 9 standards organisations and others who are sitting on the periphery. Ideal opportunity to sit down and actually ensure that the standards are interoperable and can meet the needs of all the different stakeholder groups. SNOMED International is also working in Work Package 8, contributing to clinical applications of IDMP. Again, that's so important because of clinical usage of SNOMED CT. And IDMP and pharmacovigilance. And I'll talk a little bit, come back to the pharmacovigilance in a moment. And then in Work Package 9, medicinal product dictionaries and clinical system software is the focus of that group. And what we're exploring with them is the potential areas of SNOMED CT content work and mapping as a linkage between electronic health records and regulation as they're explored through this project. And as they move beyond the project into sustainable solutions, which I know Robert and I both hope will come out of this really, really important project. As you've seen with Robert's slides, he had 13 countries that are involved in this in Europe, plus there are other countries such as the US and other countries who are looking at what we're doing. Of those 13 countries, 11 of them are current members of SNOMED International. So it's important we're going to be able to work with our member countries who are participating in this project. And as they move into testing and piloting and facilitating the linkage between SNOMED and artifacts within the project that they're working with wherever we can. And going back to the pharmacovigilance, we've been involved with the project, with the Web Radar 2 project, which is a European Union project through IMI, just finished. But the result of that was maps between SNOMED CT and MEDRA to SNOMED CT, which for adverse event reporting, they will be used in this project. Plus, they are going into production and will be available for global use through SNOMED International and MEDRA MSSO in next year in 2021 after April. Their alpha release is out at the moment. And then we will be exploring other areas where SNOMED International experience of maintaining, updating and distributing terminology and its derivatives might facilitate implementation of IDMP in its linkage to clinical and other different perspectives as they combine. And this, on my final slide, I'd like to draw attention to the resources that are available for the UNICOM project at the moment. As you can see, and I would advise you to come back to the slides afterwards, there is a gap analysis which has been done already, identifies things which need to be done related to the standards to support the implementation of IDMP in the use cases within this project. And this is a live document and we'll be updating it over the 4 years. as we come across things and as things are identified by the different work packages, of which there are 13, as Robert's already said. There is a website already, and there is access through that website to various webinars and videos. Educational offerings will be produced. We're in the early days of the 4-year project at the moment, and they will be produced. And there are various presentations being offered on a monthly basis. So please go to the website and you will see the opportunity to have a look at this. And you can contact myself at SNOMED International through info@snomed.org, and SEN and ISO Working Group 6, which is responsible for IDMP, through Shirin Golyardi, and her email address is there. So thank you very much from both Robert and I.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Robert and Jane. Can I ask that attendees give us a moment while we switch over from our pre-recorded content so that the presenters can address the questions you've been submitting live. Please also note that this session will be available on the event platform for the next 3 months. Thank you. Hello. Thank you to our presenters, Jane and Robert, for the discussion and for sharing. And now we have a little bit of time for some questions and answers. I think a question's come in from Colin McFarlane. Is it possible to follow the work and outputs of the various work WP groups? Can Jane or Robert jump in and answer that one?
I'll answer that one. Yes, of course, you can follow the outputs. We do publish regularly on the website. That was mentioned on the last slide that Jane presented. And if you're into the standards themselves, there's also the community of expertise, which addresses topics regularly that come from the different work packages. So those are the 2 ways to go.
Thanks, Robert. Just a quick one. What's the relationship between IDMP and FHIR, if either you can answer?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. The idea is that IDMP provides a logical model for identification, and FHIR is the implementable model that actually provides the communication between computer systems. But as you probably know, FHIR provides the framework, but not the content. And it's similarly with SNOMED. IDMP provides content descriptions rather than the structure definitions for communication.
Thanks, Robert. Elizabeth Donahue has asked about the overlap between the different standards and maintaining links between them all rather than direct adoption of one IDMP dose form, and whether it's confusing to have both with the same use cases. And we haven't got much time. I'm not sure if you'll be able to give that a concise answer.
I can address that to Elizabeth, but please come back to us on that one as well. The key thing is that what we're trying to do is facilitate those who are using SNOMED CT at the clinical end. Not everybody is going to use IDMP at that end, and IDMP is obviously mandated for regulation. So it's about actually how the 2 come together. And that's one of the big strengths of Work Package 1, is actually the standards bodies are there, and we will work together to make sure that those who are using SNOMED CT at the interface with clinical care and prescribing can therefore then link to the what is required at the regulation level. I hope that helps. Thanks, Jane. We've just got under a minute. I don't know, there's a question from Alistair. Is CEN-TC 251 the same as ISO TC 251? Oh, Robert.
Yeah, it's a counterpart of ISO TC 215. Just to be quick, And basically, the member bodies within CEN, the European member bodies, are also member of the ISO technical committee. So we do a lot of work jointly. And basically on IDMP, all the real work is being done in ISO, and in CEN we just adopt what's been done there.
Thank you very much, and we'll have to end here. Jane will be available in the networking lounge afterwards if you have any more questions. And enjoy the expo. Thanks.